Good evening and welcome to a live Political Paradigms reaction stream. I'm Toby Mesme, and normally this is all pre-recorded, pre-done, pre-cooked, pre-uploaded, but we have just had the first head-to-head debate, the first big moment of campaign 2024. Rishi Sunak, Keir Starmer in a TV studio with lights on, looking sweaty for 60 minutes, going head-to-head on the issues, debating what matters to voters. This is big stuff. It is a big moment in the campaign, and we're going to talk about it. And we're going to go through the debate. I'm going to give you my thoughts. Few immediate things I want to throw out there. The Snap polling is decent for Rishi Sunak coming out of this debate. He's viewed to win the debate. It's pretty close, so we'd call it an effective tie. So 51%, according to YouGov, say he won. 49% say Starmer won. Now, for context, Jeremy Corbyn was deeply unpopular and doing very poorly in 2019. He also scored an effective tie. He was on 49%, Boris Johnson was on 51%. So he came out of the first debate on that. It did not help the Labour campaign. So I think a bit of context there. Doesn't mean necessarily that will happen. It doesn't mean there aren't some undecided voters Sunak can pull in. It just means the fact that Sunak nominally, as CCHQ is saying, won the debate or was tied, being more methodologically accurate. Sorry, it's quite late, and the great thing about being live is I can't delete when I mess up words, and I'm normally so good with words. Basically, a more statistically accurate interpretation would be it's a tie, but either way, that point stands. We'll have a look at some core parts of this debate here. Oh my God, can you imagine doing the debate and slipping up like that? That's why I'm so glad I'm not doing this right now. Can you imagine if I was saying that word on stage, standing to be Prime Minister? It would be over. That would be it. Campaign done. Let's have a listen to... We'll look at closing statements. Won't do opening statements. They were fairly benign, although notable that Sunak's was all negative on Labour and Starmer's was more like positive. We've got the... This was the best moment for Starmer and the worst moment for Sunak, I think. At this point, I was like, he has completely nailed Sunak. He then proceeded to sort of do worse than that for the rest of the debate, and Sunak better. But this was the moment.
As Janet knows and everyone knows, the NHS is still recovering from COVID. We went through the best part of 2 years where the NHS couldn't conduct all the treatments it normally would, and it is going to take time to recover from that. But we are now making progress. The waiting lists are coming down. But what Keir Starmer didn't mention to you, which you did, Julie.
Waiting list 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. He says they're coming down, and this is the guy who says he's good at maths.
Yeah, they are now coming down. They are now coming down.
7.2 when you said you'd get them down. 7.2 million, they're now 7.5 million. I'd like you to explain how they're coming down.
Because they were coming down from where they were when they were higher.
7.2.
And they're now on their way down. They are down, right? Yes, because the NHS was impacted by industrial action. And if it wasn't for that, 500,000 appointments would have been saved.
So it's somebody else's fault.
No, but let me address the question, because, as you said, Julie, the NHS has devolved. So different parties are responsible for the NHS in different parts of the United Kingdom. Keir Starmer's party are responsible for it in Wales. Now, the NHS has been impacted by COVID everywhere. But things are difficult in England, I know that. But if you were in Wales, you would be waiting 40% longer for treatment. Ambulance and A&E times are the worst in Great Britain, and 1 in 4 people are on a waiting list. So, yes, the NHS has challenges, but it has challenges everywhere, regardless of the party that's in charge.
Right, so, in my opinion, that is just... It underscores the problem facing the Conservatives in this election. I think that was a dire moment. I don't think anyone would argue with that for Rishi Sunak. Because why he was better than Starmer in terms of the delivery, not necessarily the issues, but just the sort of the verbal delivery. The reason he was better is he was more concise than Starmer, and he kept landing lines. He kept landing attack lines on Keir Starmer, like a robot, basically. This is what Boris Johnson did with Get Brexit Done. So as a political strategy, it is sound, it can work. Kept hammering pension tax, £2,000. Labour, £2,000 pension tax. Kept hammering these kind of things again and again and again that was stuck in people's mind. If a voter was already inclined to move away from Labour, he may pull them towards the Conservatives with that kind of rhetoric. Now, looking at this, that is the moment that falls apart. Starmer is not as polished, not as nimble, but he is reacting, whereas Sunak is trying to deliver the line. And in that particular moment, it worked really badly for Rishi Sunak, and it made Keir Starmer seem more relatable. We had a similar moment the other way. A lot, again, the NHS is arguably more than the cost of living is going to be completely seminal in this election. If the Tories lose big time, you'll have to put the NHS up there for reasons. So this was the sort of the way it flipped the other side. And I think Sunak kept doing this the entire debate. Starmer doesn't have a plan. Starmer doesn't have a plan. Now, that's not going to completely shift the political fundamentals because Keir Starmer is 22, 23 points ahead, despite voters having doubts about whether he has a plan or not. But what this debate did present for Starmer is the opportunity to tell voters, no, I do have a plan. Here's how I'm doing it. Here's how I'm doing it. First of all, he didn't counteract the attack lines from Sunak quickly enough. But second of all, which could have been avoided. I mean, the Labour press office have had some very good comebacks this evening, and Starmer just wasn't nimble enough. But the other thing is, he was very much, and it's probably at the end of the day what will matter. He's saying 14 years of the Tories failing. Look, don't ask me questions about this. Look at the Prime Minister's record. Fine. But it has allowed that narrative to set in further. And this debate was an opportunity to avoid that and kind of be like, oh, this guy does have a plan. I think about him differently now. Whereas actually, I think coming out of this debate, the feeling will be the same as it always was about Starmer. I don't think he's massively come across as more relatable or better. I mean, he definitely came across as more relatable than Rishi Sunak, but he didn't reach out to voters in the way I think he could have done. So this was a moment that sort of typified that, I think, where Sunak is just saying, what's your answer? What's your answer? And Starmer looks shifty because he's not giving one. Even if it's hard to distill a simple answer, it reinforces doubts about him.
Well, we wouldn't pay the 35%. We've already said that to the doctors. We can't afford it because the government's already broken the economy. And there are many things that now can't be afforded. So we're not going to pay that. But what you can't do is what the Prime Minister has done, which is to
Well, you just said you'd resolve it. So what would you do?
At the end of the day...
So you're not going to give them the 35% pay rise that they're asking for. So how would you resolve it?
Look,
just standing there and saying, I'll resolve it, isn't an answer.
Another thing here when they're speaking is Starmer kept closing his eyes in frustration at that point, and I thought that's not good. Don't get me wrong, this debate has been fine for both of them, but that was the one bad moment, really bad moment for Starmer, because he kept closing his eyes in frustration, and I just thought it made him look weak.
That's not a plan.
Prime Minister.
How would you resolve it?
Prime Minister, your record is...
No, how would you resolve it? You want to be Prime Minister...
There he goes again.
How would you resolve the strike?
How
would you resolve them?
I wish he had
again
to say when Liz Truss was crashing the economy.
Could you answer Rishi Sunak's point, please, Keir Starmer?
Well, I will when I can get a word in edgeways. His record is of saying, I'm not going to get in the room to negotiate. And what have we got?
No, we've been in the room to negotiate.
What have we got? Ongoing
Let him
strikes.
answer.
We have to end these strikes.
How?
The grown-up way to do that is to get in the room and to negotiate with the doctors and come to a settlement. There's only two ways forward. One is a continuing strike, which is what we've had for a very, very long time. We're now 4.5 weeks from election. He's going to kick it into the long grass.
Right.
Or you get grown up, you go in the room and you resolve this. That does not mean you agree with the 35%. We can't afford that.
Thank you.
But we have got to settle
But on this point...
So, the other thing bad for Sunak in this, actually, is he comes across, and he had this problem in the Liz Truss debate. It came across worse against Liz Truss, I think, particularly sort of the view of Sunak berating a woman, I think came across worse than it did when he did it to Starmer. But it doesn't, I don't think people like, he was interrupting more. Starmer was more polite. I don't think voters like that particularly. Immigration was an interesting one because Starmer did land a few blows. He went, look, the Prime Minister is the most liberal. This was the new Labour line that tried to get. It's the most liberal Prime Minister in however many years on immigration. That is different. You would not have heard that from Jeremy Corbyn. Wouldn't have heard that from Ed Miliband. I don't think you'd have heard Gordon Brown go, David Cameron is the most liberal Labour leader Conservative leader on immigration. You know, he's really trying to outflank the Conservatives. Does underscore the degree of trouble they're in. And there are points in this debate you could hear the Sunak core vote strategy, right? He's not going in this debate going, I'm going to convince enough people that I stay Prime Minister. It's like, I'm going to convince enough people that I have 200 seats instead of like 70, as one MRP poll pointed out at the end of today. Though, as I say, and this is very important, critical, you might say, out of this debate, no knockout blows. Sunak reinforced doubts about Labour, continually attacked them very effectively. Meanwhile, Labour, Starmer, held his own. He needed to avoid a collapse. He hasn't collapsed. He has everything going his way. leadership approval ratings going his way. They probably will be, definitely, after this debate. Even if Sunak inched up 5 points or something, you know. And that's like the upper end of how much a debate can impact things. At the same time, coming out of this debate, Starmer's got the massive opinion polling lead. He's got the fundamentals. He's got the Farage split, sort of splitting the Conservative vote. He's got the issue environment, Labour leading on all these issues. None of that will shift coming out of this debate. What it will do is it will give Sunak something to give back to his campaign and sort of motivate his staffers, keep the show on the road. There was a worry that coming out of this debate, it was going to be a complete collapse. You know, oh my God, everything is falling apart. This is unwinnable. I mean, it is unwinnable, but don't tell them that. This is unwinnable. We are screwed. And the Conservative Party would sort of collapse in on itself. The Farage news and then like some terrible performance in the debate from Sunak. He's managed to avoid that. And he'll probably have managed to get some of his team to think, oh, we have a little bit of a chance here. And that is incredibly important politically, you know. When Labour was doing really badly, Jeremy Corbyn comes into the debate, does decently. It helps sort of ground down staffers. And you have to sympathise. If your party's 20 points behind in the polls, that is brutal. If you believe in the cause, you're going out knocking on doors. It's horrible, horrendous. I don't envy that. So this would have given Sunak something to sort of take home to his supporters. It will probably jolt Labour a bit if there's some bad headlines. They'll be like, oh shit, what do we do? And again, no complacency. But Starmer has avoided a collapse. This wasn't the mask is ripped off Sir Keir. Everyone's flocking back to the Conservatives now. It's a draw, and people don't like these guys. And that's kind of where we were before. And it is, it's a draw when they're stood on stage. But when you ask people, NHS, how are you feeling? Economy, how are you feeling? Fundamentals in the country, they are not willing to re-elect the government. And Starmer has passed that sort of test of he's not scary. We don't think he's a risk to national security. We don't think he'll sort of destroy the economy. And on that basis, Labour will be elected. And that's all they need to do. It's not inspiring. And if this was a campaign where the fundamentals were better for the Conservatives, Starmer could be struggling. Potentially badly. He's not an amazing public performer. But first of all, he's against Rishi Sunak. Second of all, the issue environment, you would have to disqualify yourself as leader of the opposition to lose in these conditions, in my opinion. That was the debate. We will be back, hopefully tomorrow. I'm aiming a 90% chance. Tomorrow, me, Theo, and Sonny, or me and Theo, me and Sonny, some combination, not just me, will be with you tomorrow on this channel. Please subscribe. We are aiming to bring you a different look at campaign 2024. We are trying to be as objective as we can throughout this, whatever our political opinions. We hold the importance of a general election at a sort of turning point like this in absolute reverence, and we want to hopefully give you some fresh conversation. We don't want it to just be the normal talking points from Westminster on political paradigms. We want to look at things. Obviously, we're younger. Hopefully that gives us a fresh perspective on things. But also, none of us really live in central London, and we are interested in how these things are playing out in the country. We've seen things go our way politically in the past, seen things go against us politically in the past, and we will be keeping up that coverage. There's another debate on Friday. I'll be doing a live reaction to that debate on Friday. But more importantly, our podcasts, it's a discursive format. Me, Theo, Sonny, chatting about this election, what we think is going to happen. Because there is so much yet to be decided. We know this is a good election for Labour. We know this is a bad election for the Conservatives. What do we not know? We don't know how well the Lib Dems are going to do. We don't know how well the SNP are going to do. We don't know how Reform is going to do, how that's going to impact the Conservatives. We don't know if something is going to swing things a bit more towards the Conservatives at the end, or if Labour's going to consolidate. We don't know which leaders are going to collapse and which leaders are going to see their ratings go up. There is so much to play for. It is the 4th of June. 4th of July is Election Day. Campaign 2024 is only just beginning. There is going to be another head-to-head debate before this ends, and it will be interesting to see how the two leaders adapt based off this debate. Both got room for improvement. Sunak needs to look less arrogant. Starmer needs to land a knockout blow and be more nimble on his feet in terms of responding to those attacks. Thank you for listening this evening. Thank you for joining us. Political Paradigms will be back tomorrow. In terms of responding to those attacks.